Hi, Sam Russell here, coming at you from my teaching studio in West London. And today's short video is going to be about the difference between information and implementation. I've got my notes here, which I'm going to be checking from time to time. So there's a ton of information available online with AI as well. So you can ask AI all sorts of things and it'll give you all sorts of great grand answers on the empire you can build. But a lot of that, it doesn't really mean anything unless you go and put it into action. And when you go and put it into action, you may find things happen or crop up that you're not really sure about, or you're struggling to make it work. A good example of this is when it comes to paid advertising. This is something a lot of guitar teachers shy away from because they can potentially lose a lot of money. And maybe they have lost money on it in the past. They've put out flyers or boosted a Facebook post or something like that and not really seen any return for their money. So when it comes to running advertising, there's a whole slew of things that could be happening that we need to be aware of. So I'm trying to think of a good way to explain this. So let's say you spend a load of money on advertising. You run, I know, some ads on Facebook. And the ad could be, and you don't get any new students from it. So what's the problem with the ad? Maybe the ad itself was the problem. Maybe it was how you replied to the inquiries. Maybe it was how you structured your introductory lesson. Maybe it was how you approached the subject of pricing. Maybe it was how you tried to book students in for their first lesson. Or maybe it's your pricing structure doesn't really help you make a proper income from your students. The problem could be any one of those. So let's break that down a little bit more. So let's say you run an ad on Facebook, and let's say the ad itself is okay. You end up with, say, 30 inquiries. So the first thing you want to know is, out of those 30 inquiries, how many people should you expect to sign up for lessons? Going with the expectation of 90% of them, you're going to be very disappointed very quickly. So if 90% of them sign up and then you say to yourself, well, only 90% signed up, so my advert failed, that would be a very, very wrong way to think about it. If 90% of people sign up, that would be great. You probably find it's more like 30%. 30% even pick up the phone, sorry. So you have to go in the right expectations. Now let's say that when let's say that you take 3 days to follow up on your inquiry. So someone's filled out your form on Facebook and you take 3 days to respond to them. It could well be that by that time's passed, they've completely forgotten that they filled out the form in the first place. It could be they're not interested anymore, or it could be they maybe don't think you're very professional, or it could even be that they've been looking for another guitar teacher and found somebody else and signed up with them in the meantime. So in that case, the problem wasn't that your advert didn't work, it was with how you followed up. Now, the next stage of following up is to actually call the person up and talk to them on the phone. Maybe instead you sent them a text saying, hey, guitar lessons are $50 per lesson. And that was what you said. Well, then the problem isn't with the advert, the problem's within your follow-up and how you're following up with them. It could be when you talk to them on the phone, you don't really tell them anything that's very helpful, and they don't feel very confident, and when you try to book them in for an introductory lesson, if you do that, they kind of fob you off with, oh, I'll call you back when next week when I've thought about it a little bit. That's not going to happen. When you're talking to somebody on the phone, you have to get them to have a little bit of trust in you because you're trying to get them to come in for an introductory lesson. You've got to make the offer to them for them to come into the introductory lesson. You've got to set a few expectations with things like prices, give them some information about logistics and scheduling, useful things that they're going to want to know. So if you're not communicating that very clearly, then it could be you have a great advert, but the way you're talking to potential students on the phone is what's letting you down. Now, students coming in for an introductory lesson, and maybe people book the introductory lesson, but they don't turn up. That could be a problem you're facing. If that happens, it's not a problem with your advert, it's a problem with how you're managing student communication, and you need to improve that. That's something I had a problem with a few years ago, actually. I'd find that nearly 50% of people were missing the introductory lesson. Huge pain in the ass. It was really annoying. So, being a business owner, you've got to figure out a way to fix that, which I did. Really easy to do. So, but just had to sit down and think about it for a bit. So maybe that's a problem. So when that's a problem, again, it's not the advert that's failing, it's how you're managing student communication that's failing. Somebody comes in for your introductory lesson, and at the end of the lesson, maybe they didn't have a very good time, maybe they're a bit bored, maybe they thought it was too difficult or not very interesting, or maybe they just didn't like you. It's always a possibility. So you've got to, and if they don't have a good time in the introductory lesson, they're not going to be signing up afterwards. So in that case, again, it's not the advert that's failing, it's how the introductory lesson is being managed. So you can see here that there's a lot of little things that need to be thought about and done the right way in order for your advertising to work. So it could be that the advertising is absolutely fine, but there's some other problem down the line. When we're in the program, we can talk about all of these things. I lay out exactly how I do them and how you can do them. I'm not saying you must always do all of these things all the time, otherwise no one's ever going to sign up with you for lessons. I'm saying this is what I do, it works, follow this, and you can probably improve on it. There's bits that maybe aren't going to apply to you, so take the stuff that works for you, use that, and you should see it working. If you've got any questions or problems or things you're not sure about, or maybe with your circumstances, doing things a certain way is tricky, we can talk about it. That's the point of the program. So, yeah, that's kind of how I approach the topic of advertising. It's not just the advert, it's how do you take somebody from seeing your advert to becoming a student. There's a whole lot of process that they have to go through, and we need to make sure that's running nice and smoothly. Now, for most people, it's going to be fine, but you might find that you need a little bit of help at one particular area or another. And if you do, we will talk and we'll figure out a way to make it work for you. That's the point of this program. So I hope that's been useful and not me just kind of rambling about stuff. If you've got any questions, as always, just let me know.